And did you send the $1,500 allowance? When I went to the apartment, my mother was in a terrible state. Dan's face turned red, revealing his anger.
He was usually calm, so I couldn't hide my surprise. We have no money. The electricity and water have been cut off. She said she didn't want to worry me, so she kept quiet.
And what happened to the $1,500? Tell me the truth.
My husband Dan seemed concerned about his mother and was not thinking clearly. It seemed that his mother hadn't eaten either and looked worn out. However, I couldn't believe it and told Dan, "Have you looked at your mother's bank book? You'll understand everything if you see it." I showed my husband the bank book, and he started trembling.
What the? What's going on? Is it possible that my mother... No way, it can't be.
My name is Anne. I work at a publishing company. Ever since I joined as a new employee, I have been looked down upon for being a woman. I was determined not to lose to men and worked desperately tirelessly. It wasn't until I turned 38 that I finally got assigned a project of my own. While my subordinates were getting married and leaving one after another, I would boast, "I live for my work." I enjoyed my job, and it gave me a sense of fulfillment. In my younger days, I used to say that I wanted to get married by the age of 40. But honestly, that didn't matter to me anymore. I had my work. Every time I attended weddings of people around me, I would remind myself of that. First, I focused on my career, and it was painfully devoid of any romantic encounters. Every single day, it was just commuting between home and the office. I would start my day early, grabbing a cup of coffee at the office, and return home late after overtime, when it was already pitch dark outside. But once I arrived home, changed out of my suit into comfortable clothes and enjoyed that refreshing feeling while sipping a beer, I started thinking, who needs marriage anyway? During that time, I met a business partner named Dan. We were assigned to work on a project together. Dan was incredibly competent and I respected him. Naturally, our relationship as work partners developed.
Would you like to grab a meal together?
Yes, absolutely.
Even during our meals, work topics dominated our conversations. We started seeking each other's advice and gradually began having meals together on multiple occasions. Initially, our discussions revolved around work, but naturally shifted to discussions about our families. We talked about our mothers, fathers, and the environment around us. I learned that Dan's parents divorced when he was young. His mother raised him on her own. His mother apparently had aspirations of becoming an actress or a model in the past. He started sharing these stories with me. Before I knew it, I found myself sharing about my parents' divorce and how my father raised me alone. It was something I had never shared with anyone before. I don't want to burden my mother, who supported me even through university, with financial troubles anymore.
I understand.
I feel the same way. I'm truly grateful to my father and I always want to repay him with filial piety.
Perhaps it was because our situations were similar, or maybe it was Dan's kindness and good nature. I started opening up my heart.
Dan also shared something else with me. My mother went through a period of deep emotional distress when she incurred a significant amount of debt. She still has some remaining debts, and we are paying them off together.
Dan's mother fell victim to a fraud scam around the time Dan started working. She was deceived and lost a large sum of money.
Dan learned about this and has been providing her with a monthly allowance of $1,000 ever since.
I was deeply moved by his kindness. For young professionals, $1,000 is a substantial amount of money. The fact that he was sending that to his mother every month left me in awe. I also didn't want to burden my father anymore. I strongly felt the need to repay him and show my gratitude.
Could I also contribute to repaying that debt? Let me help.
Huh?
It was a spontaneous remark driven by emotions. Looking back now, it might have been a complete reverse proposal. However, my words seemed to have struck a chord with Dan.
And will you marry me?
He proposed to me. And yes, let's repay our parents' kindness together.
Let's create a happy family.
And so Dan became my husband and our married life began. He encouraged me to continue working and my career was going well. Both our personal and professional lives were thriving. There were times when I had to work late and Dan would cook dinner for me. We had the mindset that if one of us took care of the household chores, it would be sufficient. Together, we built a new family dynamic and supported each other. Initially, Dan was considering living with his mother, as he was worried about her. I agreed with the idea, but his mother said, "Enjoy your time together as a couple." So, we rented an apartment nearby, ensuring that we could be there quickly if anything happened and be readily available. The financial support that Dan used to provide before we got married increased to $1,500 per month. We both agreed on this amount and sent it to his mother regularly. I also wanted to give something back to my own father, perhaps a trip or a small gift. I also felt the desire to save money for a future child, who might come along someday. But for now, our main concern was Dan's mother. We continued to support her financially, working together as a team. Immersed myself in my work every day just as I did before. One day upon returning home from work, Dan suddenly said to me, "Anne, did you send the $1,500 allowance?" When I went to the apartment, my mother was in a terrible state.
And Dan's face turned red, revealing his anger. He was usually calm, so I couldn't hide my surprise. "We have no money. The electricity and water have been cut off," she said. She didn't want to worry me, so she kept quiet. "And what happened to the $1,500? Tell me the truth."
My husband, Dan, seemed concerned about his mother and was not thinking clearly.
It seemed that his mother hadn't eaten either and looked worn out. However, I couldn't believe it and told Dan, "Have you looked at your mother's bank book? You'll understand everything if you see it." I showed my husband the bank book and he started trembling.
What's going on? Is it possible that my mother? No way, it can't be.
Since the passbook had a record of the $1,500 transfer, it was evident that I had been sending the allowance properly. However, there were also some records in the passbook, and Dan seemed to realize the seriousness of the situation. It was understandable that he was distraught. I had also recently discovered something, and when I first saw it, I was deeply shocked. But little did we know that we were about to face an even greater shock. The person on the other end was my father. He occasionally called me to check up on me. And during that phone call, you know that luxury apartment building near the station? I saw Dan's mother coming out of there. She was dressed casually. I thought she might be living there. I told my husband about what my father had said, and he immediately called his mother. However, no matter how many times he tried, there was no answer. The next morning, my husband and I went to the apartment building my father mentioned. It seemed to have more than 20 floors, an ultra-high-rise building with marble floors in all the corridors. It looked undeniably luxurious. As we waited there for a while, surprisingly, his mother came out from there. She was humming a tune and skipping. It was not the usual appearance of my mother-in-law, who usually dressed modestly, had slightly disheveled hair, and looked tired. There she was, perfectly made up, wearing an expensive coat with red lipstick and neatly arranged hair. She used to aspire to be an actress or a model. And there stood a truly beautiful woman. My husband was the first to rush forward.
"Mom!"
I followed after him. When Sherry saw Dan's face, she started running away.
"Mom, what are you doing there? Why did you come out of this building?"
He confronted her with questions, but Sherry remained silent, refusing to meet his gaze. My husband continued to press her, his grip on her arm tightening.
"Ouch, that hurts. I won't run away anymore. Please let go of my arm." Under my husband's strong persuasion, my mother-in-law reluctantly started speaking. I live here. This is my home."
The mother-in-law pointed at the luxury apartment building, confirming that it was indeed her residence.
"What do you mean?" My husband became even more confused, his voice unintentionally raising.
As I glanced around, I noticed that people on their commute were looking at us curiously, due to the commotion and the proximity to the station.
Could we please come inside for now? And then please tell us everything calmly. We'd like to hear your explanation.
She pouted, and Dan was in a state of panic. We were led into the house by the two of them. It was truly a luxurious apartment, with many rooms and a spacious living room featuring a large TV and a big sofa. It was far better than our own house.
"Mom, can you explain clearly what's going on?"
It was a lie. It was a lie.
Dan looked up at the ceiling and took a deep breath, desperately trying to control himself from shouting. What part was a lie?
I was really a victim of fraud. It was terrible. They took all my money.
It seemed that her past experience of falling victim to a fraud scheme was indeed true. However, the problem started from there. The mentality of easily obtaining money by deceiving others took hold, which was the worst way of thinking.
Then how do you explain this?
Dan took out the passbook from earlier, where the balance displayed was 0 yen, the monthly remittance of $1,500 that I had been sending. Was withdrawn on the same day, and there was nothing left in the passbook. I've been sending you $1,500 every month, right?
Where did that money go?
Sherry let out a sigh. Well, she took a breath and brought the passbook from the back room.
In the passbook, there was $30,000.
I don't understand, Mom. Explain. Why is there $30,000 in this passbook? And where did the remittance money go?
In Dan's mind, the monthly remittance of $1,500 covered the rent for the apartment, utility bills, and repayment of debts, with the remaining money used for a modest lifestyle. That was the image of his mother that he had formed. But that mother didn't exist here. It was understandable for him to panic.
Well, if I acted poor, you would give me money, right? The mother-in-law's expression changed.
It was a face I had never seen before. Cold and ruthless. With her naturally beautiful features, that coldness was terrifying. That rundown apartment doesn't suit me.
The mother-in-law confidently spoke, leaving Dan at a loss for words.
Since falling victim to the fraud scheme, she had been hoarding Dan's remittances. The money we sent was immediately withdrawn and deposited into a different account. She pretended to be in financial trouble, making us believe she had no money. She claimed that there were still debts to be paid off, even though she had long since repaid them. She continued to make us send remittances, accumulating that money and spending it extravagantly. The apartment we believed she was living in was just a camouflage. In reality, she lived in this luxurious apartment and used the remaining money to indulge herself. Later, we found out that she would go gambling almost every day and spend the money there. To add to the surprise, the story about my father-in-law having an affair and getting divorced, which she had been telling us all along, turned out to be a bold-faced lie. The divorce was apparently due to Sherry's promiscuity and reckless spending habits.
If I acted poor, my friends would lend me money. You see, I wanted to be an actress, and I'm good at acting.
She said it shamelessly, without a hint of remorse. Indeed, she was good at acting. I never imagined Sherry to be this kind of person.
Pay back all the money you borrowed from people, and we will collect the rest.
What? That money is mine. Besides, if I don't have money, I can't live in this apartment. I will never pay it back.
Then we will cut ties with you. You have no idea how much we struggle to send you remittances. Enough is enough.
Wait, Dan. Don't cut ties with me. I promise I'll return all the money. Okay?
As soon as the words cut ties were mentioned, Sherry immediately panicked. It might be another act, but it seemed like she still wanted to maintain the parent-child relationship with her son.
Sherry, please don't think about running away. If you try to escape, we have ways to find you. Remember my father's profession?
I inserted a sharp reminder and Sherry's face turned even paler. In truth, my father is a lawyer. He raised me as a single father, and witnessing his hard work had inspired me to work diligently as well. If Sherry tried to run away, I was truly prepared to consult my father, but I didn't want to burden him with unnecessary work. So I stared at Sherry, giving her my most intense glare. Afterward, Sherry started to repay the money as promised. It seemed that she had borrowed money from various people. She seemed really distressed and said she didn't have enough money for this month's groceries, so I lent her $100.
Was she lying? She said her water supply would be shut off this month, so I gave her $200 to help with her living expenses. Is she deceiving me?
Upon learning the true reasons, people were utterly appalled. Although Sherry did repay her friends, negative rumors spread quickly. Nobody seemed to be concerned about Sherry anymore. Instead, they distanced themselves from her. We also decided to keep our distance and stopped providing financial support. Sherry now lives in a rundown apartment, working part-time. She is on the brink of having her water supply shut off for real. People's personalities don't change that easily. Sherry continues to have conflicts both at work and in her relationships, often leading to job terminations. She has been moving from one part-time job to another, living an unstable life. Currently, she looks worn out and in poor condition, but it's a result of her own actions. Regarding the incident, when Dan yelled at me after seeing the bank book and accusing me of not sending money, he later apologized to me.
I'm truly sorry, Ann. I doubted you even though you were faithfully sending money to my mom. I shouldn't have done that.
Indeed, when Dan saw the bank book, he immediately suspected and yelled at me. While it was shocking, I understood that it came from his concern for his mother. Although Dan is usually gentle, I didn't resent him at all for being able to get angry on behalf of someone important. He truly believed in his mother. It pains me to think about Dan's current feelings, betrayed by his own mother. I am genuinely worried about Sherry living alone in the apartment. However, for the sake of Sherry as well, we had decided to observe from a distance for a while, and we returned to our normal life. The $1,500 that I used to send as support turned into savings as I had hoped to repay my father and for the future of our child. After several months passed and the savings started to accumulate, as if in perfect timing, God blessed me with a new life growing inside my belly. I was filled with happiness. I, who used to be so focused on work, decided to quit my job and dedicate myself to childcare. Having witnessed numerous retirements due to marriage at my workplace, I received even more blessings and well wishes from people who saw me off on my retirement. Our child grew healthy and strong, and our family of 3 with a loving husband and adorable son never ceased to smile. My father seemed incredibly delighted to have a grandchild, and he started visiting our house more often. And are you happy?
Very much.
He always worries about me and says such things. And now I'm at the airport waiting for Dan, who is going through the boarding process. Sorry to keep you waiting.
Shall we go? I'll carry your luggage, Greg.
It was a dream trip with my father, a journey abroad with my father, son, and husband. The 4 of us, to show our gratitude to my father, were about to embark on this trip. Let's go, Grandpa. Come with us.
Let's go, Grandpa. Come with us.
We left Japan with joy, determined to never betray the smiles of our precious family. Learning from the lessons taught by Sherry, I will always protect the smiles of my family.